building an economy that used machines and other things to become massively more productive, wages went up, not because...
But not at the same rate as productivity. You will always find that...
No, John, no! 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 He's doing the pay versus productivity meme. No, John, no! Which you can talk about wage inequality. You might think that's an issue. You might want a better tax system to address that issue.
And this is, again, from a libertarian point of view, I think you can say, okay, we're going to have certain social welfare, safety net programs. Those are important. But then when you start getting to like, well, okay.
Is this guy even a libertarian? So we're going to have a social safety net? What the fuck? You're going to violate the NAP just to give to people who could otherwise pull themselves up by their bootstraps? What?
Maybe I'm wrong about it. Isn't 50 to 60% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck?
No, well, you have to look into.
If you want to see more content like this, I would really appreciate you liking and subscribing. It really helps with the algorithm. And make sure to check out the Discord and other social links in the description. I'm curious. I saw a clip of this come off of my YouTube feed. Uncertainty is good for the economy. Getting into Keynesian theory. Well, I'm just going to read. We're not going to go that far in debt. There's just these two blog posts. One from Krugman, one from Brian, whatever, however you pronounce his last name. I don't know. We probably will read. I'm sure there's something on uncertainty and general theory. Maybe I should read some of that as well. But do you think mineral deal with Russia Trump has hired is in the works? I thought it was isn't that public knowledge by now? Yeah. The king of uncertainty is basically this whole theory. Yeah. Anyway, but I saw a clip of this come off of my YouTube feed. I didn't watch the clip because I was like, I should react to this on stream. So that's why we're here. Jon Stewart. I don't know if Jon Stewart as fully committed to socialism at this point, but the title implied that like he was debating whether socialism was good or not. Now, this is from Reason, which is like a libertarian show. So maybe by socialism, they just kind of mean taxing the rich or something. But I'm curious, so let's find out.
Gave me in many ways the perfect segue kind of into our conversation, because I think I want to talk to you about Doge and how you're feeling about that, the Trump administration, all those things. But first, I think I've always been libertarian curious, if that would be the right.
Yeah. Every comedian is, right?
I think you would probably have to be,
because you want to go where the jokes are and you want to be able to think a certain way and then express it. And,
that's right.
Yeah. So like every.
But here's what I always come up against, and you just brought it up. Years ago, there was a lot of lead in kids' cereal, and through government regulation. The lead was removed. So how do you square that kind of essential tension? Yeah. So, and this is where I guess I am grounded, because I'm not an anarchist or an anarcho-capitalist, which a lot of people say, well, no government is ever necessary, or kind of the same thing that anything the government does is by force and theft and it's illegitimate. And they also suck at everything they do. Why would we have them do anything, et cetera? That's one strain of kind of libertarian thinking. I'm much more like Milton Friedman, a proud New Jerseyan. Friedman? Where was he from?
He's from, I think he was born in Newark and grew up in Rahway. Rahway's two most famous residents are Milton Friedman and Reuben Hurricane Carter.
I was going to say, if you don't name somebody from the prison, you're just not working hard enough.
What the fuck is any of this shit, man?
What I'm interested in, and this is definitely over the course of my career, I become much more of what I call a directional libertarian, which is that I'm not that interested in like, okay, let's build a perfect philosophical foundation that makes perfect mathematical and philosophical sense. It's like, are we heading in the direction of more individual freedom, where people can live how they want to, where business owners can do what they want to, where things are looser and people are able to make more choices that matter in their lives. For me, the question isn't, whether or not the government is funding something. It's, are we going in the right direction or not? And so to bring that back to this question of regulation of things like lead, the single biggest thing to help air quality in the United States, arguably, was the environmental pollution, kind of standards that were passed in the late 60s and early 70s under the Clean Air Act.
By Nixon, who would be considered at this point, I think, like a gay leftist for neighbor. Like he would, you know what I mean? Like we've so shifted in terms of the paradigm, but go ahead.
Yeah, and by banning, and it took many years.
DDT and all those other things.
Well, no, because I'm a libertarian, I will pick a nit with you about DDT in just a second. But with leaded, getting rid of leaded gasoline, and the atmosphere is a commons. So it's not like you can't say, the lead you're emitting, I'm going to sue you in court for that, because it would take forever and it's never going to work or anything. But, when there is a true commons, like air can be that.
That you think the market won't address. Like there's too many externalities. And so if the market won't address it, the free market, that's a place where, in your mind, you're able to come in. Okay, that makes sense.
And by saying, okay, we're taking leaded gasoline. I mean, most people in America now, I think, probably were not, grew up with leaded gasoline versus unleaded, and all of that kind of shit. And it's like by taking leaded gasoline out of the air, that had a major positive effect on on the environment.
Listen, Nick, you and I grew up at the same time in Jersey. I'm sure you did what I did, which is ride your bicycle behind mosquito trucks. Like that we didn't even get excited about the ice cream man coming. It was when the mosquito guy with the giant, he had a pickup truck with a giant fucking fire hose of who knows what. And we would ride our bikes behind it and be like, this smells interesting. Just let it wash over us.
Yeah, no, it's like just breathe in. Yeah, breathe in, because you're huffing anyway.
That's right.
So, but this is where you can also do things, even when you're saying like, okay, we're going to build a consensus and say we want to get leaded gasoline out of the air because it has these negative effects. You can do it smarter and dumber. And like the way the government did it, and this was Nixon's EPA said, okay, we're going to mandate catalytic converters, which is a particular type of technology that takes a lot of the lead out of emissions. I mean, as well as changing how we formulate gasoline. But it's like the government probably shouldn't be dictating technology, or it could set a goal and say, you have to reduce pollution by so much, but then we're going to let you and we're going to let the market innovate to figure out what's the best way to do it. Are
you for government then incentivizing those kinds of changes? Like, would that be, or is that considered an intervention that sullies a free market?
Yeah, well, it gets complicated pretty quickly, and obviously, right? Yeah, right. But it's where it might be that we want you to reduce your amount of pollution.
Are we just gonna say subsidize instead of mandate everything to subsidize it? Oh, I'm fucked. I'm not paying attention. No.
Fine it. That's one thing. But then say, and by the way, we're going to give you a massive taxpayer subsidy, and then give taxpayers credits to buy this one kind of technology. It could be a solar panel. I don't think build your own wind farms have taken off yet, but I'm sure they're coming. You want to make it as simple as possible to say like, okay, we've come up with like, here are the basic rules, and then what free markets are really good at is figuring out innovative ways to do stuff for lower costs with better outcomes. And that's not always perfect, and it's not always sometimes. It needs a kick in the pants, or sometimes you just need a top-down regulation or restriction on something. But I think things generally work better, when you let markets operate more freely.
Tariffs are good for Vietnam. Do you mean like Vietnam, like placing tariffs on Vietnam would be good, or do you mean the tariffs that Vietnam has are good? I'm not convinced of either. I don't know what tariffs Vietnam has, but I would bet that they would be doing better without them, even if marginally.
Because a lot of times we don't know what we want,
right,
and then how to get there more quickly. With DDT, if I may, just because this...
all right, pick the DDT, and then I'll go back to the sort of more macro view, and then we'll get into sort of what's happening today.
Yeah, DDT is a really interesting example. For the kind of planetary ban, almost complete planetary ban on DDT comes from Rachel Carson in Silent Spring.
Sure.
And she was making a series of cases. And, the modern environmentalist movement in a lot of ways comes out of that book and the movement that she helped inspire. And it turns out that DDT is really good at killing mosquitoes.
The best.
And its banning was not necessarily a good thing because everything has costs and benefits. And it turns out in certain places, people are using lower levels of DDT in order to really powerfully eradicate mosquitoes. We are constantly held captive by these old things like, DDT was killing people, as if like everything good didn't come out of an era where boys were riding spider bikes, jumping ramps into vats of DDT.
Yes.
But, it turns out that it gets much more complicated, and it's worth going back and thinking about this stuff. And you mentioned polio. I'm sure we'll talk about Robert Kennedy at a certain point. Robert Kennedy, who's old enough to really remember polio, is like, the polio vaccines have killed more people than they saved. Right. And it's like, I want to see the kind of stream of iron lungs, going up in front of Health and Human Services.
We'll see for how long. But he said fucking Rick Scott should be killed. So
it's really difficult
like
right now, Nick, to make those choices and balances, especially now because you bring up the point about DDT, and you're right. I mean, it was an incredibly effective killer of mosquitoes, which were causing malaria and all kinds of disease. But then it was found to have mutagenic properties and cancer properties. And
at certain levels, right? Because this is, then this is, one of the things I gave a talk last fall, which was about what I call the agony of abundance. Like the biggest problem.
Bro, half the shit Hassan does, like, probably should have been a fucking perma. But Hassan's Hassan. I'm not convinced. I doubt it will be a perma.
Problem I think we have.
Oh, also because Hassan, we know Dan Clancy loves Hassan, and Hassan is popular enough that he definitely has a fucking Twitch representative that he's already probably messaged, and they're like working things out. But
today, in a kind of macro sense, is we forget how to learn from the past. And there was a poll last year,
which is overregulating Hassan and crashing his streaming economy.
True. Said that life was better in America in 1974, and I was like, okay, let's go. Yeah, let's go look at 1974. And like the Pinto was the best-selling car in 1974.
Which was invented to make the Gremlin feel better about itself, as you know.
Well, I was partial to the Pacer because I just remember them having an ad where a guy delivered a 6-foot sub in the back of the Pacer.
Sure.
But then it was all glass, so it would, by the time it got there, it would have flies and maggots on it.
I had a Gremlin. I was the idiot who worked his whole fucking high school career to buy an $800 off-brown Gremlin just to find out it's front-heavy, and making a left meant you fishtailed into the neighbor's yard. So it was a nightmare.
But the Pinto not only was explosive, literally, But it was a bad car. And like, we have done so much better to make better cars, but yet people are constantly being born back into the past thinking that it was a simple, a simple decision.
A simple time when cars were cars and segregation was allowed. But let's talk about that central tension, because I think this brings up, here's where I probably have the hardest time embracing kind of the foundational philosophy, which would be kind of the way that Jeff Bezos is going with the Washington Post now. Personal liberty and free markets.
Yeah.
And this is the part that's hardest for me, because in my formulation, right, one of the greatest limiters of personal liberties oftentimes turns out to be free markets.
Okay. How and what's an example of that?
All right. So the way I would look at it is this. The greatest inhibitor of personal liberty in my mind is not necessarily overzealous regulation or something along those lines. It's poverty. It's struggle. It's the inability to get enough of the fruits of your labor to allow yourself the personal freedom that you need. Survival and being on a tenuous razor's edge is, for my calculation, the greatest inhibitor of personal liberty. Free markets, the operating system that we're running, capitalism, whether it's free or not, is by its nature exploitative of labor. So their goal is to get you to work for them for the least amount of money they can pay you, because they need to drive the biggest profits, right?
Sure.
So because of that, it's hard for me to reconcile.
I wasn't paying attention. What is this? Why correlation is unreliable? What? Huh? Why do I care about this right now?
This is why I wrote Skin in the Game. About 20 years ago, I gave a talk at the Greenwich thing, explaining
those two dynamics feel at odds.
I totally hear where you're coming from. And libertarianism historically, it's like a post-World War II phenomenon, really a post-1968 phenomenon, really, as an organized movement.
Really? Why 1968, do you think?
It was partly the people who founded
the MMT people did go on The Daily Show, didn't they? It wasn't with Jon Stewart, but that was so fucking funny, man. Or not funny. That was, if you're me and you're base and correct, that was maybe depressing, but
modern Libertarian Party, people who were working at places like Reason, they felt left out of politics. Republicans and Democrats, when you're, especially if you're a young man in a draft year and your choice is Richard Nixon or Hubert Humphrey or George Wallace, you're like, okay, where's the exit, right? It's not good, right?
Would you draw it further back to like objectivism, or would you say that?
Yeah. A huge factor, and people like Ayn Rand. I never personally went through an Ayn Rand phase, but she was massive.
I definitely have told this before. Like literally, so fucking. My dad, I when we were on like some family, we were on like a family trip, and we were at a camp where like there's no internet, and I had like a bunch of books for him, or I brought a bunch of books with me, and the only one he found interesting was the fucking deficit myth, and that's the only one that he read. He didn't read the whole thing, but it's the only one that he was willing to read. Then in South Korea, car companies do good with tariffs. They were being so. Maybe I'll do a deep dive one day on the infant industry thing. So there's an argument to be made that sometimes tariffs are effective at building out infant industries. What I will mention with Korea is that a lot of their... Are you fucking kidding me? A lot of their... oh, I'm fucked. Wow, I should not have put a gecko. Korea was actually operating closer to free trade than most people think, because Korea had tariffs, but they also had export subsidies. And, a tax on imports is equivalent to a tax on exports. So if you tax imports, but at the same time subsidize exports, you're actually not that far away from free trade. It's just that you're kind of, you might have a very distorted version of free trade because you're applying export subsidies to different sectors than you are applying import tariffs on. So I will mention that. I'm not convinced tariffs are necessarily the most effective way to develop infant industry in the first place, because mathematically they're just a subsidy plus a sales tax, and we have more efficient ways to raise revenue than tariffs. And because tariffs also increase the price of the good, demand for that good can go, like we saw this with steel tariffs. Steel, there was a short-term boost in domestic steel production because of our steel tariffs. But because you increase the price, demand kind of fell and that just reduced steel output back to below what it was before the tariffs were in place, right? So a subsidy oftentimes is more efficient because it's just more efficient to raise revenue a different way than a tariff, and you also don't reduce the price of the of whatever, or you don't increase the price. You in fact reduce the price usually with a subsidy. What are good alternatives to tariffs? I just mentioned you subsidize them. There's evidence also that tariffs just reduce productivity. There's a paper on this from looking at U.S. history, because we used to have a lot higher tariffs. It found that like industries, manufacturing industries where goods were tariffed, their labor productivity decreased or didn't grow as fast, mainly because you just have less of an incentive to innovate if you don't have to face as much foreign competition. But I just don't I'm not convinced. First of all, whatever infinite industry argument may work in developing countries, certainly that does not exist for the U.S. Isn't productivity loss the main driver of tariff downsides? Probably. I mean, well, not. I mean, do you mean productivity or do you mean labor productivity? I like productivity on whole, yeah. And people usually just don't focus on like just labor productivity or whatever. But yeah. I'm gonna say another thing, but I'm also not convinced that I'm not convinced countries should develop infinite industries. I think there's evidence that trade. I don't think there is evidence that trade leads to increased growth. There is evidence that like multinational corporations, when they invest in other countries, do pro-productivity enhancing reforms. Like there's evidence that trade is just better than like trying to develop infinite industry so that later on you can trade effectively or whatever. But
through it.
Oh wow, the objectivists I knew, they were always like, oh, you should know. They didn't even get drunk. Bunch of smoking weed. So it's like, okay, I'm out.
That was the only time I ever found it interesting.
Yeah, because for me, the 1950s, I mean, post-war America is the first time when America became, kind of a wealthy country. And also like it was, that's when individual liberty flourished. Like suddenly you had, even among minorities who had it really shitty in the 50s, like if you were black, I mean, Brown versus Board of Education only took place in 54.
The only proven method of development is neoliberalism. True. There is actually a paper that doesn't say exactly that, but there is a paper called The Washington Consensus Works. And it does have evidence that, when countries undertook, the Washington Consensus reforms, they did actually perform better because of the reforms. So, I mean, it's not like there's evidence for that. Like, yeah, there is evidence that neoliberalism is based.
In the early 70s. I mean, it was bad, but at every level, people were doing so much better, and there was so much more stuff to buy, so many more choices to make on every level. It makes sense that libertarianism started to become more interesting and attractive. I was more into Jack Kerouac and the Beats, who were exploring individual liberty.
The Merry Pranksters and
so these are all parts of a broad movement. But in any case, I was going to say that I'm a libertarian because I grew up lower middle class, not because it's often characterized as this is a philosophy for upper middle class people, highly educated people, men mostly, and some women who are.
I should put frogs down.
Use cigarette holders or something. And my whole point.
Or monocles. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. My whole point, I agree with you in the questions you're asking. I think capitalism, broadly speaking, as an operating system, generates more possibilities for people. I agree, and this is why I'm not an anarchist. When you talk about poor people.
Not even poor people. I mean, like working class or even regular middle class, which is how I grew up. Even that suffers through that kind of more.
Yeah, I guess part of the problem with political discourse in America, and I think it's always been this way, is that 90% of us say we're middle class, and so you get middle class people, and this happened under it happened under George W. Bush, it happened under Trump, certainly under Biden, where suddenly households who are making $400,000 are being subsidized by the government, and you hear this. I'm talking to you from Hell's Kitchen in New York, and you'll hear people in New York say with a straight face like, "Oh, making $300,000."
It's very true.
It's just not happening right now.
It's like we're pinched, and it's like then move or whatever. But what I was going to say is that the libertarian argument for helping people who need it and assistance in the market goes something like this, or part of it is that if you're a kid and your parents for whatever reason aren't they're not well off, you don't have a lot of options.
So it's hard. Copeland, okay, I can't tell if you're trolling. I think you're trolling. Home ownership is genuinely fucked though. I mean, I think the data shows that Zoomers are doing relatively fine, but part of that is because a lot of Zoomers were able to buy homes like during fucking COVID when rates were really low. I think homeownership is fucking genuinely just fucked. But yeah.
Giving kids access to education and to healthcare.
What are these snakes are fucking useless, by the way. Why do I keep wasting money on snakes? I don't know what they actually do effectively. They just
to grow so that they can fully participate in society, which is a good thing. Then we can say, okay, well, that's why we have Medicaid and why we have public schools. And then it might be the case that we say, well, you know what? Let's maybe give
who's better at econ, socialist or libertarian. I mean, it kind of depends how far you go in either direction, right? So like, some people like Matt Brunag classifies himself as a socialist, and like he's probably better at economics than Fabian Liberty is, if he calls himself. I mean, Fabian Liberty's fallen like anarchist, but certainly I think Matt Brunag has better economic policy than a lot of libertarians who aren't like, who are relatively far libertarian. But I mean, maybe. Oh, hold on, wait. Oh, fuck. What eats the ladybugs? Oh, no. Oh, no. Fuck. Was it geckos? You lost the debate to Fabian, though? Well, yeah, but that's not I don't think that showcases that he's a smart understanding of economics. Most of that debate was not really about economics. It was about, like, the philosophy of the NAP. Fuck. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, but like maybe, I don't know, like maybe if you had me choose between like Scott Sumner and Matt Brunag, who I think Scott Sumner classifies himself as a libertarian, like maybe I would say Sumner has a better understanding. I don't know. I think socialists are worse at kind of just like rejecting economics like from the start, right? Like there's a lot of socialists who kind of just like, I literally will never accept ain't no way you lost to Fabian Liberty. I mean, you can go watch the debate somewhere, but we had like a healthcare debate a while ago. It's on my channel. You can go search up Nonfon. I think I've debated him 3 times. So I might have to search a little bit. But socialists are bad at just kind of like incredible. Are kind of bad at just like totally rejecting economics from the start. And like libertarians a lot of times are kind of better at accepting economics in the first place, but kind of bad at understanding that there's in fact nuance to things. What's up?
But I was gonna say, but I have a theory that explains all of this. Remember the theory that I broke down for you? It's that I don't think a right wing or even a fake libertarian right. I'm not saying Fabian that. I'm saying most libertarians are that though. But like, they'll never like concede though the point that they have, or at least I'll never see Pentuple as a judge go the left wing way just because they had a better argument.
Well, sure. You're saying for why I like. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I explained this a lot. I was like, the way this is like constructed is made for like the actual base liberal to always lose, because the liberals will admit whenever someone has a better argument than they have on a topic, but you will never see a Pentuple or a fuck. I need more retarded right wing people, but you'll never see them like be like, even though I disagree. Yeah, he is the only one. You'll never see like another person being, or a right winger being like, this is actually like a good argument. Although I do not like agree with this person has a better argument. Like Minar, there we go. Minar will never say that.
School their kid goes to. Like, the government doesn't have to run the schools, etc. But there should be some aid and assistance in the interest of helping people fully participate in society. I think I can make a case that is consistent with libertarian beliefs and a belief in mostly free markets and laissez-faire and certainly personal liberties. That the state can exist to help people in terms of safety nets and in terms of
Islamic communism stock still strong. Welcome back, Patrick. Yeah.
The reason why
cars became 4 years ago, he a couple days before Jan 6 said shit. We'll go down to the Capitol. I mean, Minar must have had insider information, because Minar is now a big proponent of the Fedsurrection theory. He thinks all the literally all the instigators of the riot were just federal officers Yeah.
A subsidized loan in order to buy that gremlin. You know, it actually, cars in America got better and cheaper when you think about it in terms of the amount of work that people have to do to buy them when we opened up to competition. And throughout the, through the mid 70s, the car markets in America.
This part is obviously true. Yeah.
We're basically, it was very hard to get imports. And as a result, we got, the cars that you and I, grew up.
But I mean, I don't know. I don't think Jon Stewart is. Maybe actually, it wouldn't surprise me if Jon Stewart has like some cringe takes on like offshoring. He's the reason I know Jan 6 wasn't just spontaneous, but it was planned. He literally told me a few days before. Damn. Bro, hurry up and write a Substack. Dude, Substack. Want to know what's funny is that Substack sent me a fucking email saying, people are waiting on your next post. I've not been writing. I haven't been writing. I haven't been editing. I haven't been doing shit, man. Write your next post. Your audience is waiting. I'm working on it. Barely. A little bit. Go read Econoboy's Substack. Econoboy is a Substack. He just posted. He's got a bunch. He's on it, working on a new tax series, okay? He just talked about the expenditure tax, okay? Go read some Econoboy.
Driving, where if the one good thing is I think about this all the time, and again, this is a question of progress.
Two frogs are enough.
Not celebrate uncritically, but take note of. I can remember people would have parties on the street if their car made it to 100,000 miles and the odometer went to zero.
The rollover, baby. You had to get to them zeros.
There were like 2 or 3 in your lifetime, and now you don't even change the spark plugs on a new car.
I can't read Econoboy.
And it is true that business owners want to.
You're right. Okay, you're right. Econoboy got nothing. Econoboy is a lot. Econoboy is really smart. You're right. Okay, that is true. But this is actually because he's talking about a consumption tax. This is what I like. I was actually worried. I remember when he first told me he was just writing about the expenditure tax. I literally said like, hey. Yeah, I was like, oh no, it's gonna be cringe though, because you're probably gonna be like in support of fucking taxing savings now. But he's not. Like I made a video talking about literally I read it would actually, he might have even read the same fucking thing. I read like a whole paper on the personal expenditure tax a while ago. I personally think if you're going to propose new economic theory, you should publish it in a journal around it. First of all, I'm not proposing new theory. Neither is Econoboy, really. But I read this fucking thing here, I believe. Yeah. And I like consumption taxes. I mean, Econoboy has it like super progressive, which I mean, honestly, as long as you're only taxing consumption, like I don't know if I care that good, like fine. Maybe some people would have issue with that, but what is a concept? What is a conception tax? Conception tax would go crazy though. Explain it like I don't know. Econ. Basically, the consumption. Well, the different types of consumption taxes. Consumption taxes tax consumption. It taxes your spending rather than your saving. So, like a retail sales tax that we all pay here in North Carolina. I think most states have them. Is an example of a consumption tax. The personal expenditures tax is basically imagine an income tax, but all your savings and investment is deductible. Consumption tax is inflationary. Well, I wouldn't say it's inflationary. You could say, I mean, obviously it increases the price of consuming generally, but that's not really, that is kind of how all taxes work. But what was I saying? The way this tax would work, basically, you would just be allowed to deduct all your investment and savings. So if you earn $80,000, but you save $20,000, you would only pay taxes as if you made 80 minus 20, not 50,000. $60,000. I'm bad at math. Forgot what 8 minus 2 is. You don't only pay taxes as if you made like $6,000. I mean, generally, you just don't want to penalize saving. You don't want to penalize investment because then you get less savings and investment, and savings and investment is generally a good thing. Yeah. Fuck, I might need it. Should be good. Just tax bad thing, subsidize good thing, economic rent's bad. Yeah, exactly. I think Conor did a good job of explaining this. I mean, you just read the article rather than have me like regurgitate it to you. But it also it's so funny because it puts like, you know, a lot of libertarians in a really weird position where like ordinarily like even I make this argument that like, you know, if we want to fund some program and we have to tax rich people a lot to do it, or if you just want to tax the rich because you think inequality is bad, well, that's going to have some like pretty like negative effects on investment generally, and that's going to affect a lot of other people than just like, you know, rich people. But if you say, hey, I'm only going to tax consumption, well, now like suddenly you're kind of being forced to defend, like you're going to have to say like, no, like rich people buying yachts is just like so good that we don't want to penalize it. That's just like a good thing. Like I want the rich to be able to buy yachts without paying much taxes on it. And that's a lot harder to justify than saying like, you know, if we tax rich people 70%, they're going to invest a lot less because the after tax return is so much lower. I mean, you can kind of make the argument that like, oh, but what if, you know, the industries that were taxed, if rich people consume less, the industries that rich people consume in will be hurt. And you can kind of make that argument. But it's just a lot less damaging than taxing investment. And it's also, there's going to be distributional effects, right? So like we're going to tax the consumption away, and then like if we spend it on affordable housing, well, now maybe instead of people building yachts, those people are employed in housing construction. It's not like a total loss. But it's a libertarian stream, not here for drama, just overheard it. Is this a libertarian stream? No, not really. Right now we're reacting to Jon Stewart talk about libertarianism with some libertarian guy. Oh, snakes are good for scorpions, which just showed up now when I have no snakes down, of course. Okay, so time to put down a ton of these. No, I mean, I'm a capitalist generally, but I would never call myself a libertarian.
You know, they want you to work for as little as they have to pay you. But then if you're a
this
good
is
worker,
Animal Jam,
you're going to
bro.
be competing. Other companies are going to be like, you know what, this guy is actually pretty good at what he's doing. I'm going to woo him away with a better wage.
Yeah, I think that's probably where you and I would disagree a little bit.
Yeah, no, I also think it's kind of, you can push it too far. I was looking, in anticipation for this, I was looking at the percentage of households and whatnot that are on SNAP benefits. Mm-hmm. I think almost everybody in America, regardless of political persuasion or ideology or anything, would say, you know what, like, we don't want people to starve.
Yeah, I would even question that at this point. There's a Republican congressman the other day who was like, kids should have to work for their lunch at school. And you're like, okay, that's interesting.
Anti-cap socialists somehow you ended up in my algorithm.
Controversial. Yeah, they really are within the government.
Well, I mean, depending on how far you are, we might not be that far apart. But
and the other side I would say to it is when government.
I'm fine with begrudgingly calling myself a social democrat. I don't like. There are plenty of people who would consider me a social democrat, but I mean, I don't usually brand myself as that.
Provide that, right? They attach all kinds of
conditions
rights
to
it
one
that they don't
person
attach to subsidies that are for corporations
or for mortgages and things like that.
Right. I mean,
to be fair, there are plenty of libertarians who are utilitarians or even like threshold deontologist, whatever the fuck it's called. I don't know. I can't speak today. I'm forgetting. Deontologist. It's not pronounced deontologist, right? It's pronounced deontolog, whatever. There are libertarians who would do that. Some of them, not Fabian though.
Billions for things, and yet food stamps, you're not allowed to buy hot food.
Yeah, no, it drives me nuts. And
Right.
this is, again, from a libertarian point of view, I think you can say, okay, we're going to have certain social welfare, safety net programs. Those are important. But then when you start getting to like, well, okay.
Is this guy even a libertarian? So we're going to have a social safety net? What the fuck? You're going to violate the NAP just to give to people who could otherwise pull themselves up by their bootstraps? What? What? What do you mean?
Who are making, 3 times the poverty line or something, are still getting a benefit. Maybe that's.
I mean, I'll probably go one day and do. I need to learn statistics just more generally, but I also need to. What the fuck? I don't care. Malibu, this is just you on a different account. I can tell so easily, but I'll probably the social democrat. Social Democracy in the 21st Century blog has a lot of anti-praxeology stuff, which I'll read at some point.
Taxpayer money, because that money's coming from somewhere else. But also, and you find this in all sorts of giveaways under COVID and whatnot, where people just, why do seniors get prescription drug benefits, regardless of how much money they make, or why are they getting them anyway if they don't actually need them?
I mean, if we're that concerned about it, just tax away the benefits. He's a libertarian. There are a lot of times libertarians are even more in favor of the universalized system, because there's administrative efficiency in just giving out flat benefits, just giving every. I don't know who Praxben is, giving out flat benefits and just for the rich people, taxing them away. So on net, you don't actually get the benefit.
You're more of you would say means testing is the most important aspect of the safety net.
It's 2 things. One is, I would say it would be better to give people, we know people are poor because they're below the poverty line, give them cash, just give them cash and say, okay, here, we trust you not to buy.
Okay, so he's actually, he's actually so anti-means testing that he's, that he's just saying, let's do a UBI. That way we don't have to have these benefits for seniors. Or whatever. But okay. Fair enough, I guess. Fair enough. People write down the only praxeologist that actually might hold is just low-key Econ 101. The rest is schizophrenic delusion. True and based.
Not simply to buy Letio cereal for your kid.
Which, by the way, they don't. I mean, almost entirely those benefits are used to the positive and not,
absolutely.
The whole idea is they're gaming the system for gambling money and cigarettes. It's
and it's they'll figure out how to do that anyway. But what, to get to this point, because you mentioned Jeff Bezos, who just recently said, he wants the opinion section of the Washington Post to focus on supporting personal liberties and free markets. And it's true, when government gives a benefit and then says, oh, but you know what, you have to get the 2% milk or the non-fat milk because we don't trust you to make a good decision. That is so patronizing to my mind. It shouldn't be allowed.
But you're not against the government subsidizing those that are left out of whatever economic prosperity comes from the capitalist system, which is, I think, for a lot of people would be surprising. I've always said, Rand Paul is kind of the avatar for all this in my mind, only because having lobbied down there for the Zadroga Act for 9/11 and PACT Act for veterans and other things, I always started to get the impression that a libertarian was a Republican whose town hadn't been hit by a tornado yet.
Right.
It was no money for Sandy relief, and then Kentucky gets hit by a tornado, and they're like, come on. Which made me feel like it wasn't a practical operating system for people to be talking about.
You'll have fights over where the line gets drawn, exactly,
That's
right? Things like that. But to me, it's that question, and I like the way that you phrase it. It's it's who are the people who are left out, and particularly the people who are left out, through no actions of their own. How do we give them a shot at participating in society?
But Nick, that's a much more charitable view, and this I think is going to surprise people. I think they view libertarianism in some ways as kind of a purist form of a kind of selfishness, right? That you don't do. And I would say that's a more charitable view than I hear from the Republican Party almost in its entirety. I think they view poverty and being left behind as vice, as somehow in certain areas. I think if you were to look at, let's say the Midwest of the Rust Belt, right? I think the view there is those poor people. Globalization has hollowed out our manufacturing base. And then you would say, well, what about Chicago and New York City and minority communities? And they would say, pull your pants up and get a fucking job. It's almost an analog of what happened to our manufacturing base.
Premises, buying
almost entirely
real estate to conduct
and without
business.
Any sympathy.
What you're describing is broadly
is a big factor in high
way,
prices. How do libertarians address this issue? If you can make that sentence in English, maybe I can tell. Maybe I can tell you. I don't know what you're trying. I think it is your point just that the high cost of land and rent is a big factor in high prices? Is that what you're trying to say? libertarians would just say, and I think they're mostly right in this view, is that the reason that's so expensive, rent and everything's so expensive, is because of government restrictions on land use. I think they have a point there. There are a lot of land use restrictions and zoning laws that I am against as a based YIMBY. I think that's probably what they would say. Some of them would also just say the only way you actually get inflation is, or the bigger concern is, money printing, and we should be on the gold standard, and we're printing too much money, and the Fed, and then prices will be stable. Yeah, probably that.
Roles go back and forth when you're talking about Chicago, and it's like, oh, we got to help these people. But then if it's
oh, I'm gonna upgrade them. Oh shit. I don't know how I'm gonna do that. What the fuck?
Fat Walmart shopper, in a small town in Indiana. It's like,
right.
Just buck it up, pal.
No, you're right. It does. It goes across lines. People have their prejudices against different groups.
And this is one of the things that is fascinating about Donald Trump, is that he is a master of playing all of this kind of stuff against himself. Because, when he's talking about tariffs and when he's talking about help, he just was praising the longshoremen for, getting a good deal by resisting modernization of containerized shipping. He knows how to play all of this.
Do you think that's genuine? Because I find him to be incredibly dismissive of labor and workers, and he views them, I think in his unguarded moments, like the podcast he did with Elon, where he was laughing with Elon about how badly they had cut, the workers at Twitter and unionization being, where do you think they are in reality?
Well, Donald Trump, and this is probably the only time the sentence has been spoken in the English language. I think of Donald Trump like Bob Dylan. And by that, I mean that
Hold on a minute.
Okay.
Are we recording this?
Yeah. He has
We're certainly blowing in the wind, but
a million different persona. And at any given point in time, Bob Dylan absolutely
I really like
singing. When he was
is that due to USPS and public schooling, you can live in buttfuck nowhere, subsidized by the government, put it to market,
dictated
this
and
would
then when
actually
he thought
be
that God was going to come and kill his friends and throw them into a lake of everlasting hellfire.
It was only a couple of years, Nick. That was only a couple of years.
No, but I'm saying quick. But Trump believes what he's saying.
I did not comprehend your point. I don't know how messed up your brain is that somehow you can comprehend the shit that you typed and you can't comprehend my response to it. I think if what you're trying to say is that high rents lead to high prices, the way a libertarian would respond to that is they would say the government is responsible for both rent and high prices. They would say for high rent and high prices. They would say land use restrictions like zoning laws that dictate what you can build and where is responsible for high rent, which I do believe is a lot of that is true. And they would say high prices are really caused by the growth in M2, and that's all done by the Fed and or government overspending, depending on if they're like a fiscal theory price level guy or quantity theory of money guy. Yeah, that's how most of them would respond.
Calculating, saying I'm screwing around with the longshoremen.
It's a Costanza thing.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not a lie if you believe it. Yeah. And in that moment, he believes it.
Yeah, but it does get into this larger question for the country. And surprisingly, I think my worldview would fix just about everything in the world. But
why didn't we talk to you sooner, Nick?
I've been waiting. Yeah, what we have now is a government that pretty much at all levels, but certainly at the federal level, is spending way too much. It cannot or won't raise revenue to cover its costs. So it's creating debt, and we can talk about why debt is a problem beyond some kind of accounting fetish. But the government is trying to do so many things. It is doing them poorly, and it's unsustainable. And I think we're reaching a moment where this long period after World War II, and even after the Cold War ended, where there's a reset coming. And you can't keep spending, $7 trillion a year and taking in $4.5 trillion, which is what we're doing. And we're going to have to make choices. And this is where, I think if we would say, here's the goal of government. The goal of government is not to make sure that everybody everywhere keeps the job they had when they were 25, even if they're 65. But it's like the government is here to provide several core functions and to kind of keep things moving in a direction. Then how do we pay for that? Like, how much does that cost? How do we pay for it? And how do we empower people to use, whatever money we're given?
Listen, I think you're putting your finger on the essential questions that we talk about. I guess the way that I would maybe address that is slightly different, which is government exists. Getting back to the operating system being capitalism.
Yeah, which is a wonderful
32% recession. What the fuck? Wait, did that has that jumped because of the new GDP forecast?
for everything.
In my mind, the government exists to soften the blow that a, by definition, exploitative system is going to extract. Capitalism is extractive. They're goods, raw materials, labor. It's got to be the cheapest, drive the highest profits, and the people that will.
Well, sure, we bet, guys. Putting $50 down, no recession.
Benefit that are necessarily a smaller slice of people because it's a shareholder operation, not a people operation, and the labor is not valued in the same way that investment or capital is. Capital is king.
Can I push on this a little bit? Because what I was going to challenge is like capitalism is inherently exploitative, and that labor is always getting, punched in the head or hit in the kidneys with a baseball bat by, who was the guy on the waterfront, Johnny Friendly, I think. No.
How did he get that name? He wasn't.
And maybe he had a bouncer who was really fat that they called Tiny. I think it was an ironic universe.
Oh, right? That's how it worked.
Yeah. But I don't necessarily agree with that. And in a lot of ways I would push back on it because when you talk about, the boss man, and now we're back in Springsteen universe, right? Because for Bruce Springsteen, things have never recovered from the Great Depression. He's still mumbling along the mean streets of Rumson with his hat in his hand.
You know what? We can argue about economic systems, but you were in dangerous territory, my friend. Dangerous territory.
What I'm getting at is that employers are desperate, generally speaking. Like if you are a good employee, and I worked as a manager at Reason for 20 plus years, like if there was somebody who was putting in a better than average effort, I would do everything to keep them, including like paying them more money.
But you're running a small business. Reason is a small. It's not a multi. I'm talking writ large about multinational corporations, and I'll make the case, I think, because if you look at wealth in systems that are poorly regulated in terms of capitalism, right? There is, in the same way that political power is accrued through a kind of contrived incumbents.
I'm gonna bet on there being a recession, just so people think there'll be a recession, and that'll actually increase the odds of there being a recession. I do kind of like. I want to know what people's reaction would be if there actually was a recession under Trump and if prices didn't actually meaningfully go down. Obviously, if there's a recession, I would expect inflation to fall. But I am curious, what the fuck would MAGA be saying what if we had just straight up had stagflation? What if we straight up had 1970s, 13% inflation and no growth? What the fuck would I'm so curious what Rob Knorr would be saying about that. What are these people what is Menard going to come out and say? But Libertarian do not address the fact that investors will allocate a small percentage of their investable assets in areas where profits are uncertain, where people are struggling, and thus huge part of the country would be underdeveloped if we were to accept and implement their theory. I don't, may or not understand, but I don't see how that follows. Most investments would go to high growth established economic centers. Well, yeah, that's it. Well, yeah, that happens currently. Yeah. Yeah. But I just don't think that's, libertarians would definitely say that's not a bad thing. And even I don't really think that's necessarily a bad thing.
See, I think wealth also accumulates.
And they would just bring up, like Bob Marley brought up earlier, if we didn't have things the government, public schools and USPS, you would have a much bigger incentive to actually move into these cities because they would be the only places you can actually get the shit you need.
Through a contrived incumbency by those that are wealthy. And what you find is, so let's go back to times when capitalism was less fettered. And that would be sort of Gilded Age, as it moves through. It's one thing to say, competition, iron tempers iron, it makes everybody stronger and it gets strong. But what happens is, as we've seen with monopolistic tendencies in capitalism, once wealth is accrued, it becomes much easier to then keep tilting the table more in their favor. And it almost inexorably, it's a law of nature. It's a kind of Newton's law.
I hear you, but we will disagree with this. We'll disagree to a large degree on this.
Okay.
I don't think it should, but and I'm not saying...
No, he's gonna... Monopolies can only be made if the government protects them. Oh boy, let's go.
There were times where capitalism was red in tooth and claw and exploitative.
When was it not? I guess that would be the easier question.
Well, the reason what I'm getting at is saying that when you if you go back, and this is something, there's a type of school of economic thought called public choice economics, which talks about how the story that progressives tell, capital P progressives in particular, tell about capitalism is that it was awful.
Not awful, but it's a system that requires exploitation and extraction.
Well, here, but so
I mean, it generates more wealth than any other system, no question. But that wealth accumulates unusually at the top. You brought up earlier the 50s, which I thought was a great time, and you're right.
Oh no, he's gonna say we had 91% marginal tax rates. Oh no, he's gonna say the corporate tax of 70%. Oh no, Jon Stewart, don't do it, Jon.
Tax rates then were 80% or 90%.
No,
and the GI Bill, which was a giant government expense,
Jon, no,
is what helped build that stable middle class that you're talking about.
Well, first off, nobody paid those tax rates because those were the printed rates. No, seriously. But that's why things like
literally 500 people, less than five. It was 446 people had paid those tax rates. Basically, nobody paid those tax rates. I feel like like income tax as the amount that income tax collected as a percentage of GDP, it's actually been basically flat. It's fluctuated between like 13 and 18% in the last like the entire time we've had it, essentially.
Accounts, and all sorts of things were invented for upper level people.
Sure, and they cut all kinds of deductions, and
the main engine.
Rich people always find a way out of it. True.
The main engine of things like people being able to buy their own homes and whatnot. It was increases in productivity through industrialization and mechanization. I would argue it was not unionization. It wasn't the GI Bill. I'm not saying those things didn't have an effect, but that it's because we became wealthier, because suddenly we were building an economy that used machines and other things to become massively more productive. Wages went up, not because,
but not at the same rate as productivity. You will always find that.
No, Jon, no, no, he's doing the pay versus productivity meme. No, Jon, no, Jon, don't trust the EPI chart, Jon. Why? No, I don't know. I mean, presumably this guy is gonna mention this, but that the chart that Jon is citing here, the EPI chart, lines diverge. Yeah, I know. So that chart uses two different deflators. It uses, I think, like GDP deflator for the productivity, and it uses CPI for wages. CPI tends to be like the highest measure of inflation, and GDP deflator usually is not as high. And then secondly, it looks at the wage thing is for production and non-supervisory employees. That's, those are jobs that supposedly represent like the middle class, right? But it's a subset of workers, yet they compare productivity for everyone. They compare productivity for all workers. That includes workers not included in the, oh yeah, he's gonna do the paycheck for paycheck thing coming up. I'll almost guarantee it, actually. That includes workers not in the wage thing. So they're comparing everyone's productivity to a subset of workers. What that chart actually shows, which is, you can argue there's a problem here. It's a chart of wage inequality. It shows essentially that high skilled labor is becoming more and more productive, while low skilled labor not so much. So their wages are relatively stagnant versus high skilled workers' wages just keep increasing. It's a chart of wage inequality, not of a pay versus productivity gap, really. Which you can talk about wage inequality. You might think that's an issue, and you might want a better tax system to address that issue. But it's not really a. It's not a real thing. It's just a meme. It's a meme chart. What is EPI even good for? Real. What did Hassan get banned for? Hassan said that he wanted someone to kill Rick Scott, basically. He said that if you care about this, about Medicare fraud, you should kill Rick Scott instead of cutting the budget.
Wages do not match productivity gains. They'll always lag.
Sometimes they're higher, sometimes they're
Right.
sometimes they're
Mostly.
lower. But like right now in America, we're based.
Come on. I mean, I don't. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe it's like too annoying to like explain the issues with that graph in this format.
We have like the highest median household income.
That is true as well. Also, what's the I forget the title. How not to be fooled by viral charts.
we've ever had, adjusted for inflation.
Maybe I'm wrong about it. Isn't 50 to
part
60% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck?
No, well, you have to look into.
Cat tricks, you pre-what? John, no. What's the debunk of that one? I don't remember. It's first of all, they're just like surveys. Paycheck to paycheck's not like a well-defined economic term. This is just a survey that like marketing companies put out. Oh, what's up?
Yeah, I don't know why you're laughing. I don't know why you're laughing at that. I mean, 160% of Americans. No, I think it's. Did he say only 60 Americans or only 60% of Americans?
60%.
No, I think only 60 Americans now.
Of what? Or
of all Americans, like 60 Americans.
Are living paycheck to paycheck? What? Huh?
Yeah.
That's probably the true number, but it's not.
That's right.
That's not what he said. But
No. It's so stupid. But yeah. My God. I mean, what's next? Can we try to predict what's next? Okay, let me guess. Stock buybacks. Bad. No, that's obviously not it. I just saw the neoliberal channel I sent you. Yeah, it's like a really good video on stock buybacks. It's a good video. You should watch it. It's like all his videos are really short, but they're like really good. Yeah. Did you see that video?
I don't watch that one. I don't think no. But I watched.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. That's how I found out about it. I looked up. Look, sometimes I don't do confirmation bias. Okay, that's for bad people. But sometimes when I want to research an issue, I will type it into like r/neoliberal, and like read the threads. But I don't do confirmation bias. Okay, I have like my own Python code. Okay, that when I want to look up something, it looks it up only on like my approved subreddits.
I lied. I did watch this.
I want to look up like buybacks. I look it up on like bad economics and like neoliberal, enough commie spam and stuff like that. That's how I do research. Okay.
I think
not really, but that's one way.
He's relatively pro stock buyback.
So
it's more just about the like bad history.
Capitalism is so tiring, dog. It's so tiring. It's like, do you know that it only takes like $20 billion just to end homelessness, and that what is it? Like if you're a Marxist, then like you can say everything is like slavery, colonialism, blah blah blah, and fucking 4,000,000,000% of Americans are paycheck to paycheck, and productivity and wages have separated, and farmers, they used to work way less than us. You know that, and like all of that is misinformation. All that is false. All that is false. All what I said is false. But like, how like?
Thank you for the follow, K Martinez. I really appreciate it. Welcome to the stream, buddy.
Why are we doing this? Oh my God. And like people just feel, I don't know how to tell people like, no, your wages are not lower than in 1960. They're not. They're way higher actually. It's just like stop using CPI, and even if you use CPI, it's like 4% higher, okay? And also you should not look at just wages, you should include compensation, okay? Because everyone really cares about the fact that you get health benefits from your job, but why are we not counting that? That should be counted.
Blackstone owns 30% of single-family homes. Yep, that's a good one.
Oh yeah, fuck. Oh my God, that's also in my notes. Yeah, I have like a dedicated section to all the misinfo. So yeah, houses own like a bajillion. Houses are owned by like corporations, and what else? I mean, I don't know. I want to say CEO pay, but like that's slightly misleading. I don't know what else. I mean, also the policies that are attached to all this misinformation. Like, if the policies that were attached to this misinformation were good, I would not really care. I would care less.
Sure.
Okay, but it's like, okay, corporations are buying all the homes, so we got to do rent control.
+% of Americans own their own home, compared to in the 50s, it was much lower. They have college education.
Oh, true. We know this. I don't think Jon Stewart brought up this meme, but another one is like, people don't even bring up statistics for this one most of the time. They're just like, Gen Z can't own any homes. I was like, I think home affordability is probably the thing that like, they're most accurate on, but it's not really true if you look at the data. They're still doing fine.
Educations, they have more stuff.
Oh, you're saying that our standard of living is now higher comparatively?
Massively higher. And food is cheaper. Everything is more abundant. Plus you get the personal liberty stuff, which I think is part of capitalism. I don't think, it's not like capitalism is an economic thing and then, you can, it's the weekend and you get to go to Plato's Retreat or Studio 54. They're all part of a same system, right?
Right.
Having said all of that, I mean, just to get back to it, it's like what capitalism does, and there's an economist named Joseph Schumpeter, the guy he coined the term creative destruction, and in a book during World War II called Capitalism, Socialism, and Democracy, he said, the great achievement of capitalism was not making more silk stockings for the queens of England, or the queens of Europe, but bringing them in reach of factory girls.
You're saying that Henry Ford, the sort of the mechanization of goods and services allowed more people, which I don't in any way quibble with. I think that's why we use this operating system. I'm just saying the basis of this operating system is...
I mean, he could have gone... I mean, listen, if this was me doing a debate, I'd be like way more aggressive when it comes to being like, John, you fell for like some like retarded ass like misinformation on this one. Like, this is just not true. But yeah, he's doing good. But he's also not like that insane of a libertarian. Like, he's like, oh, I guess we need a government to regulate lead out of cereal. I guess we can have a social safety net. He's at least not horrible. He's no Fabian.
Quality, and you see it in fits and starts. It's why economics goes through cycles. And that, like, if we hadn't have done the New Deal, we'll talk about it this way. Government intervention to ease the burden of those who are not able to protect their wealth through incumbency and really profit at that arithmetic or geometric level from the fruits of capitalism is what preserves the stability of the system. If we went more libertarian, I think you'd find the system is too volatile, and revolution, if we don't make, revolution then becomes much more inevitable.
So you've heard of the economic crash, massive economic crash that happened in the early 20s. That was like bigger than the stock market crash in 1929.
No.
Yeah, and the government didn't do anything, and the stock market recovered very quickly.
You're suggesting that after 1929, if we hadn't gotten the New Deal, everything would have been fine.
I'm not saying everything would have been fine and it would have been difficult, but the New Deal, it's worth going back and looking at. How did the New Deal affect the economy, and did it string out bad times? Because there are two economic depressions.
Oh boy. I haven't done reading on this, but people will argue the New Deal actually worsened the Depression. I'm not convinced that's the case, but I'm also not. I'm not convinced the New Deal like went as hard as people think it did when it comes to like deficit spending and like stimulus. Reason Magazine, Libertarians becoming a voice of reason, a terrible timeline. It's horrible. Well. At the same time, you do have to consider, okay. We're getting more and more people are just getting their news from like lefties on TikTok. So like, maybe this isn't so bad. Like,
in the 30s that economists talk about, and that every government intervention has costs and benefits, and oftentimes we have lost sight of things.
Well, let's use a more a more recent example, which would be the 2008 financial crisis versus the pandemic.
Yeah.
In 2008 financial crisis, it's caused by risk-taking behavior within our investment.
Oh no, he hasn't read Scott Sumner. Oh no, John, read The Money Illusion. John, it was NGDP, John.
Economy.
And particularly, that was behavior that was heavily incentivized by the federal government in terms of...
No! He hasn't read Scott Sumner either!
Guaranteeing mortgage loans and things like that. And
Freddie Mae and those guys got into the game pretty late. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to say that the hedge funds did it because they thought the government incentivized it.
No,
I mean this is true. This is a nice, respectful debate. Like I said, I would be aggressive, but yeah.
Federal Reserve, first off, kept interest rates artificially low for a long time, and then the government had a policy of its, government's...
John, or no, what's this guy's name? Bob. It's not Bob Dylan. Nick, no, Nick. It was NGDP. I have to read The Money Illusion at some point, man. Nick, no, you're confusing short-term interest rates with overall monetary policy, Nick. Nick, no. Nick.
Sponsored entities buying up all of the mortgage paper that was going. So banks did not do the due diligence.
But they jumped into that later.
Everybody has, some schmutz on their hands from all of this. But
it's funny. I think you and I, I'm kind of interested in this because I think where you and I would like society to settle.
Wait, how the fuck? Is this a fucking bridge?
Is probably almost the same place.
Absolutely.
I think
What's
you
up,
and I
Chairman?
would
What's
look
up?
at it as,
Man, I bleed for Hassan. It takes all my energy not to wish death every single moment of my life. Based. If you get aggressive, the other guy will get more defensive, and it leads to worse. Let's get. Well, okay, that's fair, but also, usually I'm aggressive towards. If I were okay, realistically, if I was actually talking to these people who I know are like good faith, like I'd be fine doing that. But like if I'm talking to Minar, I'm gonna be aggressive. If I'm talking to people who are fucking dumbasses, I'm just gonna be fucking aggressive. If I'm talking to people who I think deserve like quintuple to be ridiculed and made fun of and beaten, I'll be aggressive. Do I get points for bringing up the Glass-Steagall repeal? I mean, he did. Yeah, that is true. He didn't say it by name, but I'll give you points. I'll give you credit. He did mention that.
and here's my path to get there. And you would say, here's my path. And you've got to trust both of those paths. You got to go. And ultimately, you got to trust me.
Yeah. Well,
that's where it comes down to theology.
I would argue that it's also, we would probably agree on similar, on a similar path, because I suspect, we went, I was looking this up beforehand. In 2001, which was Bill Clinton's final budget year as president, he left office in 2000 or early 2001, fiscal year last a little bit longer. He spent less than $2 trillion. That was the entire federal budget. We are over $7 trillion.
Here, we can talk pretty soon whenever, we're not going to watch all of this. I think we're just going to watch up to here, like 10 minutes. What do you think caused what do you think did cause the financial crisis? It was NGDP, bro. It was whatever Scout Sumner says. Obviously the financial crisis did have to do with subprime mortgages. What's up?
Bro, did you know that nominal spending 100 years ago was lower? Did you know that?
Whoa.
I bet you didn't know that. Why are we citing nominal spending? Why are we doing... Why are we just saying the number? No, he said in 1990 it was 2 trillion and now it's 7 trillion.
Oh, that's what he said. Oh, yeah.
Dollars now. In 2019, the year before COVID, we were spending $4.4 trillion a year. That went up to $6.6 trillion in 2020. It is now $7.2 trillion in spending. And I suspect that you would agree with me that we should not be, it's not clear why we're spending $7.2 trillion.
Well, I certainly don't think we're spending it effectively. I think that's for sure.
But like, why at all? Like, how do you go from, we're post-COVID?
Also, that's not even, that's still, what, 26%? I think that's literally 26% of GDP or whatever. That's not that high. In France, it's 60%. They're, I think, the highest in Europe. And a lot of other countries, it's like 40%. Now, they do have, they all have universal healthcare systems, so that might distort it a little bit, because we don't have that. But, it's not even, I don't know why we're not looking at it as a percent of GDP. It's not like that, horrible yet.
So here's what I would say with that. There are different ways to stimulate the economy. So I think since Reagan, and probably before that, probably Carter, there has been the idea that supply side.
Oh, no, tax cuts to the rich. He's going to say it. We're going to...
sort of what they would call neoliberal policy is the best way to stimulate.
We got a graph on debt to GDP by president and party. No, I don't think so.
For incentivizing wealthier people and corporations and allowing for more M&A and allowing for consolidation within industries, which in some ways, these really, it's the rise of these gigantic multinational corporations. And it gets back to sort of what we're talking about 2008 versus the pandemic. In 2008, the crash came from the financialization of all these products. It came from the white collar markets. We bailed them out as taxpayers.
Which I would totally against.
No, they're both wrong. That the neoliberal guy Sample was talking about earlier actually has a good video on the 2008 bailout too. It's really short.
Business trend in modern politics, which is comparing incredibly costly spending programs like the Green New Deal with the Wall Street bailouts. The word bailout seemingly implies that the banks just rolled up to the Fed with hands out and money just got dumped on them, which of course is not true. One of the best ways to seem right about this sort of thing is to be so completely incorrect that there's no feasible way for someone to explain why you're wrong without teaching you at least half of an undergraduate education in the process. So in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, President George Bush signed the Troubled Asset Relief Program. This authorized the U.S. government to purchase illiquid assets from financial institutions, namely collateralized debt obligations.
Obama brought out his personal checkbook and bailed out.
Primarily made of mortgage-backed securities. It also allowed the government to purchase sizable amounts of preferred stock in these institutions. Preferred stock is a type of equity security in which the holder has no voting rights, but does get first access to dividends. This would allow these institutions, some of whom were in a solvency crisis, to stabilize their balance sheets and minimize loss without the government staging a corporate raid. This would allow them to resume lending.
Complacent in universal healthcare with single payer healthcare drives me nuts. Every country, but U.S. is Medicare. Yeah, that's true as well. The idea that like half these countries in Europe have like some type of managed competition model. Yeah, Philia Hassan got banned. We'll see how long he stays banned. I doubt it'll be long, but he did get banned off of Twitch for threatening to kill a CEO. The Beniki et al. Book of Affairs or Crisis was really good. Which one? The Courage to Act, that one, or the 21st Century Monetary Policy.
Confidence and prevent a run the banks. But some of the $700 billion pledged would go to education, healthcare spending, tax cuts, and other things that might help the average American, as is the stated purpose of the bill. And obviously, quantitative easing isn't a bailout, it's just an interesting way to enact monetary policy. Round 1 and 3 of quantitative easing focused on purchasing the toxic assets mentioned previously in order to keep liquidity high. Round 2 bought government bonds to change interest rates, and then the profit off the top of these bonds was used to pay the interest on reserve debt securities, and the excess was given back to the government. So in total, this cost the taxpayer negative $107 billion. In other words,
that makes sense, but like that I didn't even know. That was interesting that we actually fucking profited $100 billion off of that.
The taxpayer made $107 billion off of this. So this CNBC article that's cited,
and also, this doesn't quite fall into like the meme misinformation thing, but like the people who just like scream quantitative money printing, quantitative money printing so much money. It's like a lot of it just this video is dumb, like really dumb. What's so dumb about this video? A lot of QE is just trying to manipulate long-term interest rates. It's not even like it does add to the money supply, but like you buy long-term securities to drive down the interest rate because you drive up the price, which drives down their yield, and like that's just how you manipulate long-term rates. Like,
gets a lot of numbers out of mysterious places, and I frankly can't tell you where. Namely, the $29 trillion, the working paper that the article cites, measures the size of the Fed's lending commitments, which isn't a
I'm expecting people to understand monetary policy. Yeah, my bad.
The cost in total was $632 billion, but was ultimately paid back in full. To quote Dr. Hamilton, an econometrics professor at UCSD, Felgerson takes the gross new lending under the term auction facility each week from 2007.
What about asset price inflation from QE? Kill me.
2010.
That one actually, that might qualify as the meme, as like a meme argument. I think No Opinion has a blog post about it. Just asset price. It's like an old blog post. Asset price inflation. Asset price inflation is not inflation. I feel like that was a No Opinion thing. Or is it Matt Iglesias thing?
Together to arrive at a cumulative total that comes to 3.8 trillion. To make that number sound big, of course, you want to try to count only the money going out and pay no attention to the rate at which it is coming back in. If instead you were taking the net new lending under the TAF each week over this period, that is, subtract each week's loan repayment from the week's new loan issue, and add those net loan amounts together across all weeks, you would arrive at a cumulative total that equals exactly 0.
Opinion was dumb on his arguments about healthcare. His arguments about like SSDO shooter thing, the insurance thing, him saying insurance wasn't the main villain. I don't think he was really wrong about that.
The number 0 because every loan was repaid, and there are no loans currently outstanding under this program. But 0 isn't quite as fun of a number in which to try to rouse rabble. The whole point of interbank lending and the Fed acting as a lender of last resort is this short-term style of day-to-day lending. So in the most misleading way possible,
He didn't reply to me on Twitter, therefore he's a bitch. Based.
The government had $29 trillion in taxpayer money at risk. It just wasn't.
I watched Gary's economic video for the first time. Now I know it's
ever at the same time, and it wasn't ever in the same place.
In our modernizing world.
Wow. By the way, hold on real quick. How do we feel about you guys? I gotta see this. First of all, it's a new shirt. Okay, new blue shirt, new black jacket, a new haircut. Okay, this is it's all I wear. But it's a different black jacket and different blue shirt. Sometimes I wear green shirts, and very rarely I have like one red shirt, but the rest of the time, black jacket, blue shirt. And we got the haircut. Anyway. But I mean, he's a libertarian, so he's going to be against bailout or whatever. Halloween outfit? What?
That as was, but not against bailing out homeless.
The dating panel's really changed.
Maybe where you and I would differ.
It depends, but yeah.
But in the
I
pandemic,
bought it just for the. I think I probably will be on the next dating panel whenever. Like I think it's gonna be another one on Friday. I probably will be on that one. You look older. I'm 23. Hopefully they don't ask me my age again. That's my weakness on the dating panels. They ask how fucking old I am. You're older. I'm not actually 23. I'm not. I lie. I was on the dating panel and I lied about because they're not going to choose a 19-year-old. I joked about being 23. I'm not 23. You're both gay. True, accurate. What's up, PPG?
When the era that rent assistance went out and the $600, the stimmy went out, what it showed to me was it took us 10 years. It took us
I sold myself as a femboy to Skyana, and it worked for a little bit. And then I said I liked. I don't know what I did wrong. I just said I liked Live and Learn. Whereas the femme, have you not seen the dress streams yet? Holy shit! I just made a fucking swastika. Oh man, I don't know what I should have done. It's like. Wait, can't I? Oh, I can't turn with that, I guess, but online girls love femboys, apparently. I don't know if I'm gonna do this. I think it would be fun if I planned a Minecraft stream with her. But I want it to be like a 4-hour thing. I think it would be like me, one of my guy friends, one of my girlfriends, as in friend who is a girl, obviously. There might be 1 or 2 other guy people there. I don't know. Along with Skyana for like a Minecraft stream. I think that would be fun. I haven't approached Skyana about this. I don't know if she's down. But I would want it to be like like maybe a 6-hour stream. So I need mods to like make sure the game is like 6 hours long and we don't spend forever like wasting time. So like I have there's like a friend revive mod, so you can revive your friends before they just immediately die and lose all the stuff. There's like a gravestone mod, makes it easier. The automatic tree cut down, the tree fall lets you get wood pretty easily. I think I might do like a I need to find like an increased ender pearl drop rate mod. So it just doesn't take us. So it's just not as grindy to do a lot of these things. Yeah.
Just a decade after 2008 to even get back to a semblance of where we were. The pandemic, it took us a year or a year and a half financially to be back. What it says is, in my mind, direct stimulus at a demand side level is far more fiscally responsible than these trickle-down neoliberal policies. I think we can spend less and get more.
We can definitely be more effective in intervening in economic, situations. I don't think part of the government's role should be like, hey, you know what, it's not like going to a personal trainer and you come in and they're like, hey, you're looking a little fat. Let's do some abs today, and have the government constantly be smoothing the economy. Where I think it's hubris to think that it can control things. It's one thing when you have a catastrophic adventure,
but isn't it to prevent more catastrophic adventure at some level?
Well, this is where
this is where the theology comes in.
No, but it's also like, remember, in the early 2000s, we had the tech bubble crash.
Yes,
and then we had a bunch of accounting rules that were going to make sure that the financial sector never fucked around with shit anymore. Then the financial crisis hits. I would argue, it was largely because of government actions, or was heavily abetted by government actions, as well as greed.
But don't you think those actions were all influenced by the lobbyists from the when the government sets out to do something smart, that gets watered down almost immediately by the moneyed interests?
This is, public choice economics talks about how we think people want to think of the government as acting somehow differently than the private sector, but it's oftentimes completely captured by the interests that it's supposed to regulate. right? Or it is also just trying to build its own empire. So it's going to try and regulate more and more stuff.
So is the idea, Nick, if we were to boil this down, let me ask you this. Is
Government
the idea maybe that's fundamental?
Yeah, it's just more malinvestments, just more hierarchy and triangle misallocations of capital.
Our disagreement that because government can be captured by the same corrupt and corrosive interests that maybe business can be captured by. And I remember having Greenspan on the show and saying, why did we have a crisis in 2008? And he said, well, I think we thought that the banks would have done a better job of regulating themselves. And I was like, well, yeah. But the point being, is the only way to prevent that to remove government? Is that your sort of foundational principle?
Not necessarily remove it completely, but minimize its attempt to rig the system in favor of particular outcomes, whether that's for the little guy or the big guy or whatever.
And let the natural order, and that you don't fear the natural order will be that the little guy's got no chance against money.
Yeah, I don't, and I say this again, this is coming from, my father was born in Hell's Kitchen in the 1920s. He did okay. I did much better than him. What I'm getting at is the idea that I actually think that capitalism offers more opportunities specifically for people to rise up from the, the lower classes and the middle classes.
You mean as opposed to communism or socialism?
Yeah, or like, a super regulated market where you're only getting into schools because of, what family you come from and all of this kind of stuff.
Which is still a large part of the operating system that we work
Absolutely.
with.
No, and nothing is perfect, right? Nothing is perfect. But, we came out of the financial crisis with, now we know we're not going to do anything too big to fail, right? And it's like, in fact, the financial industry, the financial sector is more, is more concentrated than it ever was. And everybody in it knows that, like, we're too big to fail, which also means we can fuck around and find out how bad.
That's right.
So what I'm saying
is, watch us.
Yeah, this government, the government, it is a very tricky thing. And once you start
Wait, am I being stupid? Hold on. How the fuck? Okay. Guys, I figured it out. I figured out the Animal Jam made for toddlers video game. Wait, no, I didn't. But yes, I did. I figured it out, guys.
Like, okay, the government can control stuff and make good outcomes. Like it does until, you realize, this was a big catastrophe. And I think with something like the COVID stuff, when we're talking about, there's economic issues, which are worth talking about. And I think, the massive increasing and extending of unemployment benefits was really bad. And it's generated so much debt that is going to, that's not.
That's seriously the unemployment benefits? I feel like the PPP loans I could understand because there was quite a bit of fraud with those. I might be able to understand the unemployment benefits. He might clarify that, like, they were so high that, like, people were making more money if they quit and, like, became unemployed. Maybe you could make that argument, but I feel like unemployment benefits are, like, from my understanding, they're like a fairly effective automatic stabilizer.
That's not going away, even if, like, the annual.
Take out the $10 stocks you have in the market before you lose it all. Nonfon. I don't think I have any money in the stock market.
Growth.
Not like directly in the market. I think technically I have a savings account somewhere that was made before. I could even open it myself that probably has money invested somewhere. But
is increasing and things like that. There were so many interventions into the economy where if the government had done smaller,
I know I have bonds. I have bonds in my name that were bought for me, like when I was born. But I don't think I don't know if I have stocks actually.
Shorter times, I think we would be better off.
Well, I think they were also not practiced with demand side stimulus, and so maybe they just didn't understand quite what the real value of it was because the amount of economic activity it generated, even with wrecked supply chains.
Yeah.
So this brings us sort of around, and Nick, I can't thank you enough for sitting and having.
They actually, the names of them are fun. Like they're called like fucking like Patriot bonds or whatever. They're like Patriot bonds. I think there's another one called. Someone over giving like kind of dumb, like stupid names. They're funny, but
the conversations because there's so much in it.
Are people actually in Austrian economics, or people just rhetorically appeal to it? I mean, I think there are quite a few people who just rhetorically appeal to its ideas to like post hoc justify their policies. It's like that. And to be fair. That happens too with post-Keynesianism on the left, okay? There are a lot of just, I kind of think like broadly like left-leaning people who like appeal to like post-Keynesianism to like ad hoc justify their beliefs, right? So I do think that happens on both sides, guys. But yeah.
That is
that
relevant to
sure.
today, but also so many places of agreement that people...
I mean, just like there are actually people in the post-Keynesianism, aka base people, There are people actually into Austrian economics.
Well, may not have
somehow.
thought.
Well, this is not an extreme philosophy, and it is not a fringe philosophy. It is most people.
Although can be exploited as such by people.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it can be vilified wrongly, and it can be taken in bizarre directions and stuff. But, like, basically what you're talking about is, like, you want to live in a world where you can, figure out who you are and build the world that you want to live in. And, and not to get too libertarian, on this, like, it means, that, like, if you want to...
Well, I mean, people who still call themselves, like, social democratic or, like, still a capitalist, that'll also justify your post-Keynesian.
If you want to marry, if you're a man and you want to marry a man, anything that is among consenting adults is good. If you want to smoke weed rather than, drink whiskey, like, you shouldn't go to prison for that. And it shouldn't be illegal to buy and sell this shit.
Oh,
and,
fuck. I'm stupid.
If you want to run a business that does this versus that, like, anything that's peaceful.
And coming from somebody who still believes in government's ability to give people help, yes. Yeah. I also believe government is far too onerous, far too bureaucratic. If I could give it anything, it would be a moonshot to dispel unnecessary paperwork and to make it so that they don't have such ridiculous rules for every project that has to satisfy every interest group that ever walked the earth.
But that's part of what government is designed to do, right? I mean, I don't think that's a bug. I think that's a feature of government. And you would argue capitalism's the feature.
That's what I'm saying, right?
It is like, really, no, we need more girls in the shirt waist triangle factory.
I mean, in some respects, like, because they started off with imperialism and colonialism and slavery, and so everything that they give us from that feels like it's a concession. What are you talking about? We're paying you. You're not a slave.
Yeah.
Let's flip it now to at least
Trump strikes Iran. I mean, he's busy on trying to take over Greenland and Canada first, right? We'll see.
I think.
I don't want to say I don't think Trump will strike Iran. I think that very well could happen. As long as the ceasefire holds, which it is looking like that might not be that long, I don't think Trump will do anything with Iran. After that, though, I'm really not sure. I do think I probably would put it like a 30% probability, at least, that he would strike Iran at some point.
No, there is a feeling that the Trump administration is...
Not much.
So someone was in your waiting room, and I was like, does he know? Or is he just not letting them in?
I'm getting through this video. I told him... Yeah, we spoke about it earlier. I said, we're watching this video, and then we'll... And then we'll chat. Yeah.
Text me.
And now you're distracting me. Okay.
Libertarian.
My bad, RG. What were you saying?
I said, and now you're distracting me from...
Oh.
And that Doge is libertarian friendly. And I guess my vision of what they're doing does not match. Like the idea that, RFK Jr.
Okay, well, now they're talking about Doge. Okay, so we're good now. If you want to chat with me live, sub here or go to Nonfon420 on Twitch or Kick via the links below. Once again, please like and sub to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support me, and I'll make sure to reply to any question you ask. See you guys next time.